They say Paris is a city that remembers every story of love. Each street corner, every cafe, every stone bridge carries whispers of people who once fell for each other here. Some stayed, some drifted apart, but all left behind a piece of their heart. Tonight you'll witness one of those stories, not of forever, but of a moment. A fleeting romance between Belly and Benito, two strangers whose paths collided under the Paris sky. Paris does not rush. The city moves at its own rhythm, steady and soft, like the heartbeat of someone lost in a dream. The lamps glow golden along the Seine, their light spilling across the water in long, trembling reflections. Lovers walk hand in hand, their laughter floating like music in the air. The scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee drifts from corner cafes. Even the chill of the evening carries a warmth, the kind you can only feel in a place built for love. Belly steps onto the cobblestone streets, her breath turning white against the night. She is not here searching for romance, at least that's what she tells herself. Paris is supposed to be a distraction, a city break, a chance to get away from the noise of life. Yet as she gazes up at the Eiffel Tower glowing like a beacon, in the distance she feels something stir inside her. A quiet reminder that this city doesn't let anyone remain untouched. On the other side of town, Benito walks with no destination in mind. He has always believed in chance, that the most important moments arrive unplanned, as if written in the stars long before you knew to look for them. He stops outside a small bookstore, its window glowing softly against the night. Inside, couples wander between the shelves, fingers brushing as they reach for the same stories. Benito watches for a moment, then smiles faintly like he's remembering something long gone. He steps inside. And here, in this quiet corner of Paris, fate begins to write their story. Belly wanders between the rows of books, her hand trailing across the spines. She pauses on a volume of poetry, its cover worn, its edges softened by the touch of countless readers. As she pulls it free, another hand reaches for it at the same time. She looks up, and there he is, Benito. His eyes meet hers, not with shock, but with the quiet recognition of someone who feels like they were supposed to appear. There is no need for words. The moment stretches, golden and delicate, as if the city itself has slowed down just for them. The hum of voices fades, the air thick with possibility. It's nothing more than a glance, a smile, a shared heartbeat, and yet it feels like the start of everything. Paris has chosen its next love story, and it begins here, between two strangers. Under the gaze of books that have already told the tales of countless lovers before them, outside the rain begins to fall, soft and gentle. The streets shimmer like glass, reflecting the glow of the city lights. Belly and Benito step out together, umbrellas rising, footsteps falling in unison. For a moment, they are no longer strangers. They are simply two people walking side by side in the city of love, where even silence feels like poetry. The night deepens. The Eiffel Tower sparkles in the distance, reminding them, and us, that Paris has always been a place where love finds you, even when you're not searching. And as Belly and Benito disappear into the glowing streets, the story of their romance quietly takes its first breath. Paris is full of meetings that feel like accidents, yet later reveal themselves as fate. Some say it's the air, others say it's the rhythm of the streets, but there is something in this city that pushes two people together when the time is right. That is how Belly and Benito found each other. Not through plans, not through introductions, but through the quiet pull of destiny. The rain had stopped. The cobblestones glistened under the dim glow of the lamps, each step echoing as though the city itself was listening. Belly carried her book close to her chest, her umbrella still dripping. She didn't expect to see him again. After all, Paris is wide and endless, a maze of streets and lives that rarely cross twice. And yet, when she turned the corner into a cafe lit by golden light, there he was, Benito, alone at a table near the window, sketching in a small notebook. Belly froze, caught between surprise and something harder to name. She thought of leaving, of disappearing into the night before he could see her. But Benito looked up at that very moment, and their eyes locked through the glass. The space between them shrank in an instant. He raised a hand, not a wave, just a simple acknowledgement, as though he had been expecting her all along. She stepped. Inside, the warmth wrapped around her immediately. The smell of roasted coffee, the low hum of voices, the clinking of cups. Benito closed his notebook as she approached, sliding it aside as if making room for her without question. Their meeting, still wordless, felt like the continuation of something already written. Belly sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. It was not silence born of discomfort, but of understanding. The city outside carried on, cars rushing, footsteps, splashing, laughter drifting through the wet streets, yet here, at this small wooden table, time slowed. Benito finally smiled, a soft curve of his lips, and said, "I didn't think I'd see you again." Belly tilted her head, her voice quiet but steady. "Paris is smaller than it seems." And just like that, the distance between them was gone. They talked, not with the hesitation of strangers, but with the ease of old friends rediscovering each other. They spoke of books, of favorite cities, of the music that stayed with them long after it ended. Belly laughed more than she expected. Benito listened more than he spoke, his eyes never leaving hers, as though he was memorizing every shift in her expression. Outside the window, the Eiffel Tower gleamed in the distance, its light spilling across the city. It was as if Paris itself was watching, approving, blessing this chance encounter. At one point, Benito reached for his notebook again. He flipped it open and slid it toward her. Inside, rough sketches filled the pages, bridges, rooftops, and faces caught in fleeting moments. On one page, beneath the hurried lines, was her Belly, not perfect, not exact, but unmistakably her, drawn from memory after the moment in the bookstore. She looked at him, eyes wide, caught between disbelief and something deeper. Benito shrugged. A little embarrassed, but his voice was steady. "Some people you only meet once, but they stay with you." "I didn't want to forget." The words hung in the air, soft but powerful. Belly had no reply, only the rising warmth in her chest, the kind that felt both thrilling and terrifying at the same time. The night grew late, and the cafe began to empty, but neither moved. They lingered, stretching the moment, unwilling to let it slip away. The world outside could wait. For now there was only this table, this quiet corner of Paris, and the unexpected bond between two hearts that had no reason to meet except for the city that had decided otherwise. And so, second chance meeting became the first chapter of their story. A story that would unfold not in grand declarations, but in stolen moments, shared glances, and the kind of connection that does not need explanation. Belly and Benito had found each other again, and this time, Paris would not let them go so easily. Paris has always been a stage, but not for actors. It is a place where ordinary people stumble into extraordinary moments, where every street becomes a scene, every bridge a backdrop, and every glance a line in the script of love. For Belly and Benito, the city itself seemed to open its arms, as if determined to give them a story they would never forget. Days turned into nights, and nights melted into mornings, yet time felt slippery, as though it was hurrying past them while also standing still. They began to explore Paris together, their footsteps tracing paths through its beating heart. At sunrise, they would sit at a café terrace with cups of steaming coffee, watching the city wake. The streets filled with vendors arranging flowers, bakers pulling trays of fresh bread, and children rushing to school with scarves wrapped around their necks. Belly would lean into the warmth of her cup, and Benito would sketch the world as it moved around them. Often she caught him sketching her instead. Her laughter, or the way the light touched her hair. By midday, they wandered into museums where silence was louder than words. In front of paintings centuries old, they stood shoulder to shoulder, not speaking, simply feeling the weight of beauty that outlasted lifetimes. Benito whispered once, "Art is like love. It only matters if it stays with you." Belly smiled, her heart pressing against her ribs, knowing that his words would linger. Long after they left these halls. At dusk, they strolled along the Seine, the river glowing gold beneath the sinking sun. Musicians played on the bridges, their violins crying out stories of passion and longing. Belly and Benito walked without hurry, sometimes speaking, sometimes letting silence speak for them. There was no pressure, no promises, only presence. And in that they found something rare. Something that felt truer than the loud declarations of the world outside. The nights belonged to Paris itself. They rode the carousel in Montmartre, its lights flickering like stars, their laughter spinning into the air. They sat on the steps of Sacré-Cœur, gazing at the endless spread of the city below, its lights shimmering like falling constellations. Benito reached for her hand once, carefully, as though he were asking for permission. Belly did not hesitate. Their fingers locked together, and with that single gesture, the city seemed to breathe around them, content that its work was being done. There were small moments, too, the kind that would be forgotten by anyone else but remembered forever by them. Sharing a pastry too sweet for one? Trading stories of their past with the kind of honesty that only strangers can give each other. Belly teasing Benito for the smudge of ink always on his hand. Benito sketching a quick flower on the corner of her napkin, leaving it for her to fold and keep. It wasn't grand, it wasn't loud, but it was theirs. Every corner of Paris gave them something. The city seemed determined to make their love feel both fleeting and infinite. The Eiffel Tower, sparkling against the midnight sky, became a witness to their laughter. The bridges across the Seine carried the echo of their footsteps. The cafes remembered the sound of their voices. Even the rain seemed to fall for them, soft and forgiving, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected their closeness. But beneath the beauty of it all was a quiet truth. They both knew, though neither said it aloud, that this romance was fragile. It was born of the city, shaped by its magic, and like the glow of Paris at night, it might fade when morning came. Still, they did not resist. They chose to live in the present, to take each moment as if it were infinite, to let Paris write their story without worrying how many pages remained. For in those days and nights, Belly and Benito were not visitors, not strangers. They were lovers written into the fabric of Paris itself. The city had become their stage, their witness, their secret keeper, and in every smile, every glance, every touch, Paris whispered back to them, "This is what love feels." Like when you let it breathe. Paris at night is not the same as Paris in the morning. The golden glow fades into a softer silver, the streets quieter, the laughter of the day replaced by the hush of dreams. For Belly and Benito, their final night arrived quietly, almost too quietly, as if the city itself was reluctant to let them go. Neither spoke of it, but both felt the weight of time pressing in, the unspoken truth hanging between them like mist in the air. The Eiffel Tower shimmered in the distance, sparkling against the midnight sky. They stood by the river, side by side, listening to the gentle rush of the Seine. It was the same river they had walked beside countless evenings, the same bridges they had crossed, the same music that had followed them through the city. And yet, tonight, it all felt different. Every sound seemed sharper, every light brighter, every second more fragile, as if Paris itself was trying to hold them still before the world carried them apart. Benito broke the silence first. His voice was low, almost drowned by the water. "I wish time listened to us, just once." Belly turned to him, her breath catching. She wanted to answer, to say she felt the same, to admit that she, too, wanted the night to stretch forever. But her words stuck in her throat, tangled with fear and longing. Instead, she slipped her hand into his, their fingers tightening in quiet desperation. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. They walked slowly, their steps heavy, their bodies drawn close as though bracing against the inevitable. The city guided them, leading them past the cafes where they had laughed, the carousel where they had spun until dizzy, the steps where they had watched Paris flicker like stars. Each place whispered back their memories, reminding them of what they had shared and what they were about to lose. When they finally stopped, it was beneath the Eiffel Tower. Its lights danced above them, steady and infinite, uncaring of human hearts. Benito looked at her, his eyes soft but full of a sadness he couldn't disguise. "If this were forever, I'd tell you everything," he said. "Every thought, every fear, every dream. But maybe it's better this way. Maybe Paris is only meant to give us this, and nothing more." Belly felt her chest tighten. She wanted to argue, to ask for more, to demand that love not be so cruelly temporary. But the truth was already written in their silence. Some loves are not made for lifetimes. Some are meant to exist only in fragments, beautiful, fleeting, unforgettable. And this was theirs. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. The night grew colder, but she did not feel it. Instead, she memorized the rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his hand, the weight of his presence. She knew that tomorrow the city would wake, and their story would dissolve into memory, but tonight they were still here. Tonight they were still theirs. As the final sparkle of the tower faded into steady light, Benito let out a quiet laugh, tinged with sadness. "Paris will remember us," he whispered. Belly smiled faintly, her eyes wet, and answered, "And we'll remember Paris." They did not kiss goodbye, not in the way movies often show. Instead, they stood together, holding on until they couldn't anymore. When Benito finally stepped away, it was with a glance that carried more weight than words. Belly watched him go, her heart aching, her soul split between sorrow and gratitude. Paris remained behind them, timeless and unchanged. The city would go on telling its stories, offering its streets to other lovers, weaving new romances into its endless tapestry. But for Belly and Benito, Paris would never be just another city. It would always be the place where they found each other, where they loved, and where they learned that not all love stories are meant to last, but all are meant to matter. And as Belly took one last look at the glowing tower before turning away, she whispered into the night, half to herself, half to him, "Sometimes Paris gives you love. Sometimes it teaches you to let go." The wind carried her words into the dark, folding them into the endless chorus of stories the city has always kept, and just like that, their chapter closed.